can now go through some questions in relation to that part. I want us now to go through some questions in relation to that element. So the first question I want us to check, I want you to check something brief in the sitting of November 2015, question number 2, part D. November 2015, there is a question number 2, part D. Check the question for November 2015. Question number 2D. Question number 2, part D. I want us to check. It should be on which page? Will you prepare first papers? For now. Yeah, mkumbuke kubeba. So it becomes easier. So when you check through that question for November 2015, question number 2, part D, so they have said it is on page 60 what? So on page 63. So that question reads that the following data was extracted from the financial statement of Kabucho Limited as at 30th September 2015. As at 30th September 2015. So they gave you the 10% preference shares. The bar value was given as 10 shillings. Total amount is 16 millions. Ordinary shares, the bar value is 10. Also the total amount is 16. Then retained earnings, 15% debentures. So the company's net profit before interest and tax was 80 millions. It was 80 millions. So the company's dividend payout ratio was 50%. And the corporate tax rate is 30%. So now required, they wanted you to get the dividend per share. They wanted you to calculate the dividend per share. So for you to get the dividend per share, you prepare the income statement. Once you have prepared the income statement, we shall require this, the ordinary dividends. So you take these ordinary dividends, you divide by the number of the ordinary shares in order to get the dividend per share. So first, we prepare the income statement. So the first reason on that element, we prepare up the income statement. So we shall be required to prepare the income statement. So this is now our income statement. This is now the income. This is now the income. So we come up with the income statement. So we start with the profit before interest and the tax. We start with the profit before interest and the tax. We start off with the profit before interest and the tax. Start off with the profit before interest and tax, which is given as 80 millions. Which has been given as 80 millions. Then on that, we less the interest. So we less the interest on that. We less interest. So interest, you can see the question has given you 15% debentures. So interest is calculated on the debentures. Are you able to see the 15% debentures? Yeah, so we get the 15%. 15% of the 48 millions. 15% of the 48 millions. We get the 15% of the 48 millions. 7.2. So you subtract the 7.2 millions so that we get the earnings. Earnings before tax. So what should be our earnings before the tax? 72.8. Then now we less the tax. So tax, the question had given you the information to do with the corporate tax. You see the corporate tax, it is 30%. You can see before required. So we get 30%. We get 30% of 72.8 millions. Get 30% of 72.8 millions. 21.8. So that we now get the earnings after the tax. We get the earnings after the tax. So what should be our earnings after the tax? 15.96. Then now we less the preference dividends minus the preference dividends. So to get the preference dividends, you can see in the question they gave you 10% preference shares. Are you able to see the 10% preference shares? Maonapo juu kwa income statement. Yeah, so you get the 10%, it will be 10% of the 16 millions, 10% of the 16 millions, which is going to give us which figure? 1.6 millions. So that we now get the earnings available. We get the earnings available so that we get earnings available. We come up 49. 49.36 millions. Then now, after getting the earnings available, we now less the ordinary dividends. We minus the ordinary dividends. So to calculate the ordinary dividends, you can see in the question, you are told that the company's dividend payout ratio was what percent? Before the corporate tax, the company's dividend payout ratio was 50%. So get 50% of the 49.36 millions. Get 50% of 49.36 millions. 24.68. So when you subtract, you now get the retained earnings. We now get the retained. We now get the retained earnings. retained earnings. So it still be yours. 24.68 million. Then we also need to calculate the number of the ordinary shares. We also need to compute number of the ordinary shares. We now also need to get the number of the ordinary shares. We also need to come up with the number of the ordinary shares. So for us to get the number of the ordinary shares, the question gave me the ordinary share capital. Are you able to see the ordinary share capital? Remember how much? 16 million. But the bar value per share, the bar value per share is how much? 10. So it will be able to give us 1.6 million ordinary shares. 1.6 million ordinary shares. Be able to give you 1.6 million ordinary shares. So now after that, we can now answer the question. We can now answer the question whereby they wanted you to compute the dividend per share. They wanted you to come up with the dividend per share. They would like you to compute the dividend per share. So to calculate a dividend per share, we want to see how to compute the dividend per share. How to get dividend per share. So dividend per share will be given by total ordinary dividends. Total ordinary dividends. Total ordinary dividends declared. Total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Then we divide by number of the ordinary shares. So to get the dividend per share, you simply take total ordinary dividends declared and paid. We divide by the number of the ordinary shares. So dividends, ordinary dividends is the 24.68. Then the number of the ordinary shares are 1.6. 15.43. So that is meant to be 15.43. It will be 15.43. So apart from that, sometimes the question may also ask you to calculate the earning per share. Let us also, the question did not ask, but assuming they also ask you to compute the earnings per share. They also ask you to calculate earnings per share. So earnings per share is supposed to be given by earnings available. Then we divide by the number of the ordinary shares. So to compute the earning per share, it will be the same as earnings available. We divide by the number of the ordinary shares. So earnings available is the 49.36. Also divide by 1.6. So earnings available is a point income statement. The 49.36. So that one is giving us which figure? So now, apart from that, I want us to have a subtopic as financial ratios. We can now have a subtopic as the financial ratios. We can now have a subtopic as the financial ratios. We can have a subtopic as the financial ratios. We can have a subtopic as the financial ratios. The financial ratios. So I've given you some notes. So those who are online, have you seen the notes for the financial ratios? Those who are online, can you confirm to me whether you can see the notes for the financial ratios? So I have summarized that part. I want us to go through them. When you check through the notes, they have said that financial ratios can be classified into 5 categories as follows. They can be classified into 5 categories as follows. So there is investment or valuation ratios. Investment or valuation ratios. Number 2 would be liquidity ratios. Number 3 would be leverage or gearing ratios. Number 4 would be profitability ratios. Number 5 would be activity or efficiency or asset utilization ratios. So we start with the number 1. So number 1, they have given you as investors or valuation ratios. They have given you as the investors or valuation ratios. So under the investors or valuation ratio, they are saying that these are ratios used to determine the value of the company and may include. Number 1 is the earning per share. So for the earning per share, they say that this ratio indicates the profitability available to each share held by the investor. So it is computed as for, so earnings per share will be equal to earnings available for the ordinary shareholders divided by the number of the ordinary shares issued and fully paid. So that's what you have seen here. You can see what we have calculated there. To get the earning per share, you simply take the earnings available for the ordinary shareholders. We divide by the number of the ordinary shares. That's now A. Then B is that next one. It is supposed to be the dividend per share. You make that adjustment. You see that dividend per share is supposed to be B. So dividend per share is the one which is supposed to be B. So it indicates the actual cash received by the investor for each share held. So it is computed as follows. So to get the dividend per share, you simply get the total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Then you also divide by number of the ordinary shares issued and fully paid. So this one is what we have seen there. You see how we have calculated our dividend per share? You simply get the total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Then you divide by the number of what? The ordinary shares. Or it can also be given as earning per share multiplied by what? Dividend payout ratio. Then the C should be the earnings yield. The one indicated as B should be C. The one indicated as B should be our C, earnings yield. So for the earnings yield, it indicates the percentage return for every amount invested in the company. Then earnings yield will be equal to earning per share divided by the market price per share. Then you express it as a percentage. Then the market price per share will always be given since it is determined by the demand and supply forces of the security. Then dividend yield is our D. Dividend yield, you name it as D. So dividend yield will be, it indicates the percentage returns in the form of dividends for every amount invested in the company. For every amount invested in the company. So it is supposed to be given by, so dividend is to be given by the dividend per share divided by the market price per share. Then we show it as a percentage. Then D, which is supposed to be D, is supposed to be the dividend payout ratio. So dividend payout ratio, it indicates the returns of the earnings available to the ordinary shareholders. So to get the dividend payout ratio, you simply take the total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Then divide by the earnings available to the ordinary shareholders. Then you express it as a percentage. Or dividend payout ratio will be equal to the dividend per share divided by the earning per share. Then you show it as a percentage. Then they also gave you retention ratio as our F. So to get the retention ratio, it is simply 1 minus the dividend payout ratio. Then the next one is about the dividend cover. So to get the dividend cover, you simply indicate the number of times ordinary dividend is paid out from the earnings available to the ordinary shareholders. So dividend cover will be equal to the earnings available to the ordinary shareholders. You divide by the total ordinary dividends declared and paid. Or also, dividend cover will be the same as earning per share divided by what? The dividend per share. Then I've also given you the last one as the price earning ratio. So to get the price earning ratio, when you want to compute the price earning ratio, it is supposed to be, it shows the relationship between market price per share and the earning per share. So price earning ratio will be equal to the market price per share divided by the earning per share. So that is now all about the investors or valuation ratio. That is all about the investors or valuation ratio. So we can now use a question in relation to that. We can now use a question in relation to that. We can also check now November 2015, question 3, part A. We can check November 2015, question number 3, part A. So in your book, indicate as number 1, investment ratio or valuation ratios. So in your book, you shall have there as the investors or valuation ratio. So this question that we are doing is on the investors or valuation ratio. Investors or the valuation ratio. So the question is meant to be November 2015. Question number 3, part A. November 2015. It is meant to be the question number 3, part A. November 2015. We get the question number 3, part A. So that question 3, part A reads that question number 3, part A, it will be able to read that. So that question 3. So are you able to see the question number 3, part A, where they say that, where they were able to say that the following information relates to Mongwe Limited for the year ended 31st October 2015. So you are given earnings yield, also dividend for the year, then nominal value per share, market price per share. So required Roman letter 1, earnings per share. Roman letter 2, dividend cover. Roman letter 3, the price earning ratio. So we start with that Roman letter 1. We start off with the Roman letter 1. So we start off with the Roman letter 1. We start off with the Roman letter 1. So we start off with the Roman letter 1. So that Roman letter 1, where they have given you a figure of the earnings per share. So earnings per share, earnings per share. So for this question, we shall not be using the formula that I've given you, but we use the earnings yield. We shall use to get the earning per share, to get the earnings per share. We use the formula of the earnings yield. Are you able to see the formula for the earnings yield? So earnings yield, it is supposed to be given by earning per share divided by market price per share, then you show it as what? A percentage. So we make the earning per share to be the subject. We make earning per share to be the subject. So when you make the earning per share to be the subject, it will be the same as the earnings yield multiplied by market price per share. It will be the same as the earnings yield multiplied by the market price per share. So earnings yield has been given to you in the question. They have given us what percent? Earnings yield to what percent? Yeah, so you take the 25% multiplied by market price per share, which has been given as 115, which has been given as 150. So that should be able to give you what is supposed to be. What is supposed to be the earnings per share. So to get the earnings per share, the earnings per share is coming to how much? Yeah, so that is how you are to calculate the earnings per share from that question. You use the formula for the earnings yield. Then you make the earnings per share to be the subject. So we go to the Roman letter 2, the dividend cover. We go to the Roman letter 2, where we also compute the dividend cover. So dividend cover from the notes. I've given you two formulas for the that. So dividend cover from the notes. So dividend cover. I've given you a formula for that. So dividend cover, it is supposed to be given by earnings available to the ordinary shareholders. Yeah. Hiyo imetakiwa already na hapa. Najua hii ni percent already. Kama hii ingekuwa, so hii it is 225 divided by 100. It is, yeah, it is already taken into account by putting here percentage. Because hii is in form of percentage. So in the RAB here. Yes, he already has been calculated. Na iko na percentage. Ndio maana iko hivyo. So this percentage is included in this. So yeah, this one is supposed to be 0.5. So, but it is given as 25%. So when it is given as 25%, if you take this now, multiply by that, then you multiply 100, it will come back. Because this is the same as 25 divided by 100. Same as 25 divided by 100. So let us now go to this particular dividend cover. So for us to get the dividend cover, we use the second formula of the dividend cover. So that dividend cover, it is supposed to be given by the dividend cover. It is supposed to be given by earning per share, divide by what I've given you as the dividend per share. So we use the second formula. I've given you two formulas for the dividend cover. It is either earnings available to the ordinary shareholders divided by total ordinary dividends declared and not paid, or it is simply earning per share divided by the dividend per share. So what we need to do first, we get the dividend per share. So to calculate the dividend per share, you can see the question said that the dividend for the year is what percent? 10% of the nominal value is 10% of the share's nominal value. So you simply get 10% of the nominal value. That nominal value is 40. You see the 40? So what should be 10% of the 40? So 10% of the 44. So now our earning per share, we have calculated in Roman letter 1. Yeah, so you take 37.5, divide by the dividend per share, which is 4. Divide by the dividend per share, which is meant to be 4. We divide by the dividend per share, which is meant to be 4. So it is coming to which year? 9.38. So we get a figure of 9.38. Then after that, we should now also compute the Roman letter 3, the price earning ratio. We also need to calculate the price earning ratio. So price earning ratio, the price earning ratio. So price earning ratio, the price earning ratio. It is supposed to be given by market price per share divided by the earnings per share. So price earning ratio, you simply take market price per share, we divide by the earnings per share. So market price per share is given as 150. Then earning per share, we go to which figure? Roman letter 1. So 37.5. Got 37.5 at that point. So that is now on that question. So I want us to have a short break. Then from there we proceed.
Ili kutumia immediate.
So let us now get another question. We can now get another question in relation to that. So before we go to the next question, I also want us to check something brief in your notes before we get to the next question. So when you go to your notes, after number one, as the investors or valuation ratios, there is also number two. You can see number two, there is about liquidity ratios. Number two is about the liquidity ratios. So when it comes to the liquidity ratios, they are those ratios which indicates the ability of the company to meet its short-term financial obligations. They include there is the current ratio. So current ratio is supposed to be given by the current assets divided by the current liabilities. And the recommended current ratio is normally 2:1 or simply 2 times. They have also given you the quick ratio or acid test ratio. The quick ratio or simply the acid test ratio. So that is supposed to be given by current assets, we minus stock. We divide by the current liability. Then stock is normally excluded from the calculation of the quick ratio because of Roman letter 1. It may be difficult to convert stock into cash immediately. Roman letter 2, stock is valued at the lower of the historical cost and the net realizable value. There is also the 1C, which is the cash ratio. When it comes to the cash ratio, it indicates the ability of the company to meet its current liabilities from its most liquid current assets and the short-term marketable securities. So short-term marketable securities will refer to investments that can be converted into cash immediately, e.g., the treasury bills, government bonds, commercial papers, etc. Then cash ratio should be equal to the cash in hand and bank. Then we also add the short-term marketable securities. Then we divide by the current liabilities. So that's now number 2. The number 3 is about the gearing or leverage ratio. So when it comes to the gearing or leverage ratio, they have said that it indicates the extent to which, so they are also known as the capital structure. They indicate the extent to which the company has borrowed fixed return capital to finance its assets. These ratios will include a debt to equity ratio or capital gearing ratio. So this ratio indicates the amount of the long-term debts for every 1 shilling of equity invested in the company. So debt equity ratio should be equal to long-term or the fixed capital, charge capital, divided by equity, then you express it as a percentage. Then B is the debt or financial gearing ratio. It is supposed to be equal to the total liabilities, long-term plus the short-term. Also divided by the total assets, the fixed plus the current. Then we also show it as a percentage. C is the fixed charge ratio. So this ratio indicates the proportion of the total capital, which has a fixed rate of return in relation to the total capital. And the next one is the times interest earned ratio, or simply the interest cover ratio. So that one will indicate the number of times interest expenses can be paid. Interest expenses can be paid from the operating profit before the profits gets exhausted. So it is supposed to be given by earnings before interest and tax. Then we divide by the interest expenses. So after that, now I want us to check the question in your past papers. I want us to check a question in your past papers. So this one should be in the sitting of December 2021. December 2021, there is a question number 4, part D. December 2021, there is a question number 4, part D. December 2021, there is a question number 4, part D. So that question 4, part D, they said that, so December 2021, question number 4D. The following information relates to Kabaka Limited for the year ended 31st March 2021. You are given the profit after the tax, then 10% debentures, also the ordinary share capital. So additional information, not number 1, the market price per share is given as 72. The corporate tax rate is given as 30%. So required, calculate the following ratios. Required, they would like you to calculate the following ratios. So the times interest earned ratio. So that is one of the ratios under the gearing ratio. Consider ratio number 3 on page 4. Number 3 on page 4 under the capital gearing or leverage ratios. Are you able to see D? On your D, the times interest earned ratio. On your times interest earned ratio, it is supposed to be given by earnings before interest and tax or operating profit. And we are supposed to divide by what? interest expenses. We divide by the interest expenses. Then Roman letter 2, so you know the price earning ratio. Price earning ratio is supposed to be given by what? From the formula, the previous question that we did. The price earning ratio was market price per share divided by earning per share. But before we answer the question, we prepare the income statement. Before we answer the question, we prepare the income statement first. So let us prepare the income statement for that element. Let us see how to prepare the income statement. Let us see how income statement. So let us see how we can now be able to prepare the income statement. We now prepare the income statement. So when we are preparing the income statement, the question had given us the profit after the tax. But remember, we are supposed to start with earnings before interest and the tax. Remember that? Yeah, so we start off with, in the income statement, earnings before interest and the tax, which is the same as the operating profit, which is the same as the operating profit. So that figure is not given. So that figure is not given. We put there a question mark. That figure is not given. We work backwards to get that value. Then we are supposed to less interest. We are supposed to minus interest. So to get the value for the interest, the question gave you 10% debenture. The question had given you 10% debenture. So we get 10% of 12 million. You see that? Yeah, so we get 10%. So we get 10% of 12 million. So what will be the 10% of 12 million? 1.2. So it will be 1.2 million. So that we get the earnings before the tax. So that we get the earnings before the tax. So also earnings before the tax is not given. Also the earnings before the tax, it is not given. Then we are supposed to less the tax. We are also supposed to less the tax. A figure which we don't know. A figure which we don't know. Then we get the earnings after the tax. So earnings after the tax. You can see the profit after the tax. Comment to pay which figure? The profit after the tax. You see the 12 million. So they have given you 12 million. So from there, we have seen that the tax rate is what percent? Even not number 2. The tax rate is 13%. So this figure is the same as 30%. Which means this one is 70%. Because we less 30% as the tax, so that we get the earnings after the tax. So the earnings after the tax is meant to be 70%. Then the earnings before the tax must now be what? 100%. Because 100% minus 30% is when we get 17%. So now we do our workings here. We say that 70% is equivalent to 12 million. How about 100%? So we cross multiply so that we get the earnings before the tax. So that we get the earnings before the tax. Sorry. 17.14. So this one is now 17.14 million. So my interest was not even, was to get the earnings before interest and tax. My interest was to get the earnings before interest and the tax. So when I take this subtract this, I get this one. So now to get that, I just add this plus that to go back to that level, to go back to that position, to go back to that level. So whereby this one should now be how much? So this will now be 18.34. So now after that, we got the Roman letter 1. That we now go to the Roman letter 1 of the question. So Roman letter 1, the question wanted you to calculate the times interest earned ratio. They wanted you to compute the times interest earned ratio. Time interest earned ratio. So let us see how to get the times interest earned ratio. Times interest earned ratio. So time interest earned ratio. The formula among the gearing ratios, you can see it is supposed to be given by earnings before interest and tax. Earnings before interest and the tax. Then you divide by the interest expenses. So when you want to calculate the times interest earned ratio, you simply get earnings before interest and tax. We divide by the interest. So earnings before interest and tax, which is 18.34 million. We divide by the figure of interest, which is 1.2 million, which is meant to be 1.2 million, which is meant to be 1.2 million at that point.
Okay, so the question is, so how do you get the process of setting a sale price for one of them? The price is
so it is now a value of 15.28, 15.29. You can have it into 2 decimal places. 15.28. That's 15.06. Yeah, so that is now our Roman letter 1. That is now our Roman letter 1. So let us now check the Roman letter 2. So Roman letter 2, they were asking you to calculate the price earning ratio. They wanted you to calculate the price earning ratio. So for us to get the price earning ratio, for us to come up with the price earning ratio, remember price earning ratio, price earning ratio, it is supposed to be given by market price per share divided by what? Earnings per share. It is meant to be given by market price per share divided by the earnings per share. So first, we want to get the earning per share because market price per share is given. So to compute the earning per share, we first compute the number of the ordinary shares. Number of the ordinary shares. We compute first the number of the ordinary shares. So to compute the number of the ordinary shares, we get the 80 millions divided by the bar value, which is 28 millions. We divide by the bar value, which is 20. So now the ordinary share capital. Have you seen the ordinary share capital? Yeah. So your figure, the total value is 80 millions. The bar value was given as 20. So when you divide, how many ordinary shares do you get from there? So there are 4 million ordinary shares. They are meant to be 4 million ordinary shares. Then after that, we also compute the earning per share. So to get the earning per share, for us to get the earnings per share, it is given by the earnings available. Earnings available divided by number of the ordinary shares. It is supposed to be given by earnings available, we divide by the number of the ordinary shares. So that question had no preference shares. You see the preference shares. So that means there is no preference dividends. So our earnings available will be the same as the earnings after the tax. Earnings available will be the same as the earnings after the tax. So you take that 12 millions, divide by the number of the ordinary shares. Number of the ordinary shares, they are meant to be 4 millions. The number of the ordinary shares are meant to be 4 millions. They are meant to be 4 millions. So now when we do that, we should be able to get to it. That's fair. Fair 3. So it is 3 shillings per share. It is going to give you 3 shillings per share. So now you come back to that to get the price earning ratio. So you see the market price per share in the note number 1. They gave you which figure? The market price per share in the note number 1 is given as. So you take now your 72 divide by 3. So that now should be able to give you the price earning ratio. It is simply market price per share divided by the earnings per share. So now you can compute what is supposed to be the price earning ratio. Just take the market price per share, you divide by the earnings per share. The market price per share, you divide by the earnings per share. Simply take the market price per share, you divide by the earnings per share. Divide by the earnings per share.
So wherever you 16,000 multiplied by 4, multiplied by 20, so that's minus the fixed cost of 4,000. You can get 12,000. So 12,000 multiplied by 12,000 multiplied by 204,000.
So after that, when you continue again with your notes, so are you able to see on page 5 in your notes, the one for the profitability ratios? The one for the profitability ratios. When it comes to the profitability ratios, they are saying that this ratio indicates the ability of the company to generate returns in relation to the sales and investment. They are classified into two. So A will be profitability ratio. Then, so under the profitability ratio, they say that those ratios will include, so that is profitability in relation to the sales. So Roma letter 1 is the gross profit margin ratio. So the gross profit margin ratio, it indicates the ability of the company to control the cost of sales. So it is calculated as, so gross profit margin will be given by the gross profit, you divide by the sales, you express it as a percentage. Roma letter 2 is the operating profit margin. So it indicates the ability of the company to control the cost of the sales and the operating expenses. So to calculate it, it is simply earnings before interest and tax. Then we shall be able to divide by the sales. Then we also show it as a percentage. Then operating expenses ratio. It shows the relationship between total expenses, including the interest paid and the sales. So operating expenses ratio will be equal to total expenses, excluding the interest expense, divided by the sales. Then also the net profit margin ratio, the net profit margin ratio. So they have given you how also to compute that. That is now A, profitability in relation to the sales. Then B should be profitability in relation to investment. Profitability in relation to investment. So there we have been given return on investment or return on the total sales, also return on the net assets or returns on the capital employed. Then now number 5 is meant to be the activity or efficiency of the assets utilization ratios. So they have said that these ratios indicate the efficiency with which the company will utilize its resources to generate their revenue. They include the stock or inventory turnover ratio. So I've given the formula for that. The stock or inventory holding period, I've also given the formula for that. Total assets or investment turnover. So I've also given you the formula for that. The fixed assets turnover, accounts payable or the creditors turnover, then accounts payable or payment period. So I would like you to read those ratios. So that when we meet, I will now do the question 4. So we shall do the question. So our next question should be May 2019. Should be May 2019. May 2019. Question number 3, part B. May 2019. There is a question number 3, part B. So that question I will not be able to finish it because they have talked about that should be that. So anyway, I will not be able to finish the question. So we shall stop there when we meet now in our next class. So yeah, so we shall do the question for May 2019. May 2019, question number 3, part B. Question 3, part B. So online, we can stop there for now. When we meet, we shall now be able to look at those questions.
So now, I want to
funny.
I didn't even. Maybe the brain.
Let me just run. Let's see.
Okay. Hello, banana.
So those two just answer. Now, as career, Now,